Maybe Will or Kevin, you can let me know when the number of people dialing in seems to slow down.
We have most everyone who has signed up so far.
Okay, I'm going to give it one more minute and then we'll get going. We should get going. Well, let's lose the agenda and I'll start the meeting. Thank you. Evening, everyone. Welcome to CB8 Roosevelt Island Committee. For those of you who haven't been to one of these before, my name is Paul Crickler. I'm the chair of this committee. What I would like this committee to be, this meeting every month, to be a forum for REOC and us residents to talk together. And I'm going to tell you tonight, we're going to get the start of that. What I hope will be a reset. We have members of REOC management who I'll be introducing in a few minutes later on. And I'm very pleased about that. In terms of tonight's agenda, we have three items in the agenda. The first one is an application by Cornell. The second item is about the F-train shutdown during every weekend in February and see what REOC can do to help us mitigate that. And the third item is a discussion about the tram. Uh, Before I get on to the meeting itself, I want to mention for you all, for your calendars, February 7th, there'll be a joint meeting of this committee and transportation with the MTA, all about the Q102, Q104 bus route change. So if you have any concerns about that bus route, or if you have friends who do, please come along to that meeting. That'll be your chance to talk to the MTA at our own community board.
And
Before
Paul,
I
if you
go,
want to also plug that our regularly scheduled date in February is not going to be the Roosevelt Island meeting, so there will not be a meeting on Monday the 5th.
that's a good catch. Thank you very much, Will. Before we go on to the agenda, I'm going to ask if you would mind, Kevin, unmuting Audrey Tannen and Matt Waldman, please. Matt, I'm going to hand over to Audrey. I think, Matt, you might enjoy this. I hope you do.
Hi, Matt and everyone. First of all, Liz absolutely apologizes for not being here this evening. She really planned to be, but I think some of you know that this group, Moms of Liberty, is up on the Upper East Side, and Liz, along with a lot of her colleagues, elected officials, are there protesting. This is as a Southern Poverty Law Center. This is a hate group. It's a recognized hate group. They're for banning books. They're homophobic and all sorts of things. So only for a reason like that, it's happening right now on East 73rd Street. So she is there joining with those protesters. Otherwise, she absolutely would have been here. And we are going to reschedule. She is chair of finance. So February, March become very difficult and very busy for her. But she is committed to being here and joining. And please know we keep her very well informed. You have resident board members who are absolutely in communication with her all the time, as are many others. And full disclosure, you know I am also a resident. So we definitely keep Liz up to date on everything. That being said, since she has been here for a year, she has come to recognize the activist and advocacy community here on Roosevelt Island, which she definitely appreciates. But we do want to point out one person in particular, Matt Waldman, who just as a citizen, I don't think you're on a committee officially, Matt, are you?
No,
Or
no.
on a leadership, or you're just a guy who lives here, who has taken it upon himself in this WhatsApp in front of the tram, in front of the train, to always be a voice with information and reason. You really do tamper down everyone's concerns and crises, and you've really been exceptional, Matt. And Liz was hoping to be here to recognize you, but I will say this is a certificate of recognition from her to you, Matt Waldman, for your selfless advocacy and community service to the people of Roosevelt Island during the transportation service modifications. You have been extraordinary. I learned from you. I report to Liz what you're reporting to the community. You've been the chief communicator, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you, And this is all on really, really, really. what made you do this for everyone? You just,
I don't know. It just kind of fell into it, and it's
yeah.
been really. Also, I kind of have like a background in like transportation, urban planning, so I feel like connected to it.
Well, we got to get you more involved, even more involved. I mean, truly, before I think Matt, you were the first constituent we heard from, even
Oh,
before the shutdown. So, and you
okay.
continue again to be a voice of information and reason, and we really appreciate that. And I guess Paul, you'll let me know how I could get this to Matt. I don't know. We'll figure that out.
We'll work it out
Okay.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Well
you for
done,
the
Matt.
time. Thank you.
I'll
Thanks,
add my
Matt.
thanks to Matt. Matt, you do an amazing job on the WhatsApp group for keeping people informed. And now you know why I've been so keen to make sure that I knew if you were coming to the meeting or not. So I'm glad you're here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the agenda. I want to go and deal with the Cornell application first and then come and introduce REOC and then talk about agenda items 2 and 3. So if we could please unmute those 3 folks from Cornell and I can hand it over to Jane, please.
All right, thank you so much, Paul. And speaking of thanks, we really thank you for all of your efforts to work with us to get this application on the agenda. And always also to Kevin and to Will, who are remarkable in the way that they work with everyone who has to go before the community board. We really appreciate it. I think what I will do, Diana, is turn it over to you. Diana Allegretti is Cornell Tech's Director for Design and Construction, and she leads this project. And then I think, Diana, you'll want to introduce Casey, so I'll turn it over to you now.
Yes, hi. Good evening, Roosevelt Island Committee of Community Board 8. Again, I'm Diana Allegretti, the Director for Design and Construction. I'm joined by Jane as well as Casey Bills from SOM, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, who are architects and planners for our campus. There's another person actually that I'd like to ask if you could please unmute, and that's Clive Howard, who is also a colleague of mine on the communications team. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Nice
So
to meet
tonight,
you.
our application, we're going to be presenting 4 university branding elements. And as some of you know, we've opened up on 2017, and we completed our last 2 buildings in 2021. And since then, we have grown and matured. And if you've ever visited our campus, you'll know that we have a very open campus. There's no gates, there's no walls. And so it's very pedestrian friendly. And typically in university settings, on gates or walls is where branding of the universities are, or the colleges. We do have our building names, such as the Bloomberg Center, the Tata Innovation Center, and the Verizon Center, but we're quite understated in the Cornell University and the Cornell Tech brand names. So that's the heart of this application tonight. So we had engaged with Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and they were our, as I said, they were our master planners, and they gave careful consideration to these elements in terms of the graphics, the form, the scale, the size. And they worked very hard to make it match the palette and the materiality of the landscape on the campus to blend seamlessly, and also to blend in with the existing elements that are there, such as the lamppost, the other signage, railings, etc. So it is our intention that we will be presenting to the Public Design Commission on February 12th. I think what I'd like at this point right now to turn it over to Casey, who will give more details on the elements. And I just want to thank you for your time and your attention.
Great. Thank you, Diana. And thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay? Great. Okay, so as Diana said, we're proposing some brand elements on the campus to give more brand visibility. And so just wanted to start with just an aerial view of the campus. And then this is our site, as you all well know. And so what we're proposing is adding these graphic elements. We have 4 total, and I'll walk you through each one, starting with graphic element 1, which are banners. And so this plan is showing all the locations of the light fixtures on the campus, all the dots here. And the dots that are in orange are the light fixtures that we are proposing adding perforated metal banners to. These are some existing photos of the light standards on campus from the various vantage points that are shown on the site plan. And so what we are proposing is that we add the Cornell logos to banners that are affixed to these light standards. And so we're looking for them to be perforated metal. And we're kind of showing it in section here, what that looks like. We do have two different types of light standards. One is slightly more curved than the other, so the details reflect that. And then our mounting method as well. And these are just our technical drawings of those light standards for more information. The second element that we have is a dimensional seal that we'd like to add to the gateway to campus. We don't really have anything at this location at the moment. So this is an overall plan showing where it's located here at the gateway, and then an enlarged plan showing a closer detail of where it's located. And this is the existing condition currently. So we're proposing that a fabricated stainless steel dimensional seal is placed at this location to really welcome folks onto campus. And this would be externally illuminated with subtle uplighting. Some more information on section and some fabrication details. The third element are wall-mounted site identification at the secondary entrances onto campus. Shown here, we're proposing at the Bloomberg Center and at the residential building. And these are the existing landscape retaining walls at these locations. And we're proposing dimensional metal letter forms be applied of the Cornell logo at these locations. This is giving the overall dimensions, and then a little bit more information about what that would look like. We're proposing water jet cut stainless steel brushed letter forms. And then lastly is the house red LED. It's currently over here, this residential building. And so what is shown here is the existing condition. There are existing uplights here that wash up the spine of the building. And we are proposing to replace them out in kind with red lights to reflect the Cornell red brand color. This is showing here what we are asking to be taken off at this condition, the existing lighting fixtures, and then replaced with something that would wash up the spine of the building. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Anything else from Cornell? No. So
Nope.
what I'd like to do is start off with any members of the public before going to members of the board. Any members of the public, if you'd like to speak. Will, do you want to give your drill?
I'll let Kevin.
Kevin.
So if anyone wants to participate, you can raise your hand by going to reactions icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. And then be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. Yeah, please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support.
Thank you. Let's go to Frank first, please. If you can unmute Frank.
Hi, Frank France here, Roosevelt Island Residents Association. Nice to see the presentation. I walk around the campus often, and I think that would look consistent. And also, I didn't know that was the actual red color, but certainly that would look nice in terms of branding. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Let's go to Judy, please.
Okay. Am I on? Okay, good evening. Could you go back to the presentation to item 3?
Sure.
Third. And the one before that. Okay, here. Now, Cornell Tech, where you want to put the sign, is that what mean you would take away the historic sign, the sign about the island history?
No, as you can see, Judy,
or is it around the corner?
the historic sign is around the corner on West Loop Road, where the pin letters are proposed. It's facing south. That plaque will stay exactly as is, where is.
Well, there's a lot of growth there in the summer when the foliage grows. Also, the red illumination, the next one,
Yes.
Okay. in your description, you say it faces the Queensboro Bridge. This lighting does not face the Queensboro Bridge. It faces Manhattan. I don't think it would really be very obvious if you were coming over the bridge to see it. And red lights have an interesting historical history. So, really, guys, I don't know.
The Cornell red, though, right? It's not just
I
a
know
red.
Cornell red. There's a laugh in this world because what red lights used to symbolize. It does not face the Queensboro Bridge, as you said in the pamphlet in your summary. So, I mean, it would be seen by the people of Manhattan and South. I don't think it would be very well seen from the people crossing the bridge, unless they were coming by some other means. I think the elements is sort of okay. The banners I like, especially since you've included Jacobs and Cornell. They seem to be nice. And they're the same banners that you're using on most campuses now. They don't seem to. How big is the disc at the front door, at the front gate? Yeah, how big is that disc? I couldn't find
It's from ground to the top, it's 6 feet.
6 feet, okay. Okay, and so would you take away that little C column that's there? There's a little column with a C on it.
No, the C will remain.
It sort of doesn't do very much at this point. It's rather sad looking, so I understand why you want a better identity there.
Yeah.
Those are my only questions.
Thank you, Judy.
The red light is interesting.
Thank you, Judy. Margie Smith, please.
Unmute. Yeah, I think it looks terrific, and thank you very much for showing it all to us. My only question, and it's more of a curiosity thing, I know it's Cornell red, but Roosevelt Island has a Roosevelt Island red also. I'm wondering if it's going to be the same shade of red as our buses and waste containers and those things.
We're going to be doing a mock-up process and doing further lighting studies on it. So we can definitely look to see if there's how close it is or how different it is. If that is a concern that it'd be too similar.
It's not even a concern. It was more of a curiosity.
Oh.
It kind of ties everything together that you guys happen to have red also as your color, I think. So I think it looks terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't think we have any more questions. So Jane, you're looking for a resolution from this committee, from the full board. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
So I've got a resolution here, which is basically taking the language that Cornell provided, and just saying the elements are the 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, be it resolved that CB8 approves this application. And I can see on my screen that we have Judy, myself.
Paul, a few people have questions.
Oh, I'm so
Sharon,
sorry, I missed that. Yes.
Ellen.
Thank you. Sharon, please.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to second your resolution, Paul.
Let's go to Ellen Pollovy first, please. Thank you, Sharon.
Ellen, you should receive a prompt asking you to unmute. Please send me a message if you're not seeing the prompt.
I think we should move on to our voting. So just before you second my motion, I can see here we have, apart from myself, Judy, Sharon, Pope Davis, Amra, and Abraham's on the Zoom as well. So that's 5 of us who can vote on this one. So the proposal, I think someone's supposed to propose it, not me. I don't know how that works, actually. Kevin, should I propose it or just somebody else?
You can.
It
doesn't really
I
matter.
propose the resolution. I think Sharon would like to second it.
And then somebody
Absolutely.
and somebody needs to call the question eventually after discussion.
Judy's calling the question, right?
I'm calling the question, yes.
Wonderful.
What happens next? Will, Kevin?
All right. So if you would like to vote anything other than yes, so if you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause on this application and this resolution, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand, and we'll unmute you so you can clarify. Give it a couple of seconds to make sure that everybody has their opportunity. And otherwise, it looks like it is a unanimous resolution with
Brilliant.
all those folks that you just listed earlier.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Cornell, for coming. It's going to look lovely.
Thank you very much for
you.
your time and your attention.
Appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. Moving on to the next portion of our meeting, I really do hope people start looking at REOC with maybe open eye, not open eye, wrong word. We've had a terrible history on this island. I've only been here 3 years of animosity between REOC and the residents. There are now new management, interim maybe for now, who want to have a new approach, and we're looking for a reset. One great example of that is that until this meeting, the previous management has said that REOC would not be present at these community board meetings. So I was delighted a couple of days ago when Bryant told me that REOC would be present. Even more delighted yesterday when, I don't exactly know what your titles are, so I'm not going to get it wrong, but when Gerald and Drew accepted the invitation to come and speak at this meeting, and these are the folks now running REOC. I was delighted, and I think it shows great openness. I understand that there's lots and lots of issues still we want to talk about. Before we get into our 2 agenda points, I'd like to hand this over to Bryant to make an introduction. So if you could please unmute Bryant and Gerald Ellis and Drew Amin, please. I'll hand it over to them.
Thanks, Paul. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So it's a pleasure to be here again to speak in front of the CB8 Roosevelt Island Committee. For those who don't know me, my name is Brian Daniels. I'm the Communications Director for the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. I've been with the corporation since March of last year. It's really been my pleasure to work on this island, to partner with folks like Paul when possible, where I could, to help try to build some of the bonds between REOC and the community, which I think we are committed to doing the best we can right now to foster better communication and better understanding of how things operate within the corporation and then just on the island in general. So I really appreciate the invitation to come here tonight. And as Paul had mentioned, there's been an interim change in leadership at the corporation, which I'm sure folks have heard about. But for now, what I'll do is we have our 2 new interim leaders here with us, Gerald Ellis and Dravika Patel Amin. And if it's okay, Paul, I will turn it over to them for some remarks and some introductions as well.
That'd be great. Welcome to both of you to this meeting as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. You want to go first?
Sure. Currently, I am the CFO and Vice President of REOC. I joined in September of 2023. So I've been here for a little over 5 months now. Prior to joining REOC, I held leadership positions as an executive CFO in the private equity and hedge fund world, as well as real estate, non-for-profit, and high net worth family offices. So my background is in financial and operational management, and I've been responsible for accounting, tax, audit, and also human resources administration, investment reporting matters, and charitable philanthropic affairs. I grew up in Queens and always thought of Roosevelt Island as a green space surrounded by water that provides like peace and tranquility and beautiful views. And I chose to work at REOC for these reasons, in addition to giving back to the community and work with the public and be a part of the corporation's mission. So I really hope to bridge the gap between REOC and the public, and I hope to learn a lot from this meeting. And just know that REOC is under new leadership, and we're more solutions oriented. And if you reach out to us, you will definitely receive a response. And I hope to work with you very closely to meet our objectives.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew. And well said. My name is Gerald Ellis. I'm the Deputy General Counsel at REOC. I have a background. I live in Astoria. right over the bridge. It's like a half an hour walk for me door to door, which is nice. I have a background in affordable housing. Before I came to REOC, I worked for the New York State Housing Finance Agency, working on affordable housing developments throughout New York. I teach a class on affordable housing at Fordham Law School. And I guess the things that drew me, I have a long sort of connection with Roosevelt Island professionally. I worked on the financing of Riverwalk 8. I used to work at Related Management Company and briefly worked on the lease up of Riverwalk 7. But really, honestly, I ride a bike. I like to ride a bike. And I would come to the island a lot to ride a bike around Roosevelt Island because it's a great place to ride a bike. There's not a lot of cars and it's beautiful. So I spent a lot of time there too. I also just honestly believe in good government. I've worked in government for many years now, and my father worked in government. He fixed traffic signals for Los Angeles County Department of Public Works. That was what he did for his entire 30-year career. So I have a great affinity for governments, many relatives who work in government, and I really believe in the mission of it. So that's really what attracted me to Roosevelt Island. And honestly, I'll say too, I'm a real estate lawyer by trade. So the particular issues of the extension of the master lease, and some of the issues on the island, just the unique structure of it with its ground rents and ground leases and whatnot. I also was professionally kind of attracted to that work as well. So that's a little bit about my background. As Drew said, obviously we're in this interim period. I can direct you to the press release. I'm sure you all have read it, but there's going to be a review conducted, and while that review is being conducted, Drew and I have been put in charge with Howard Pollovy, working very closely with us. We're in direct contact with all the board or many of the board members on a daily basis. And it's really a collaborative effort for us. We can't do this alone, any of us. So in terms of the other piece of what Brian and Drew had mentioned, the community outreach aspect and just us being more available to the community, I think that is, for us, especially right now, one of the most important things that we're trying to focus on. The onus is on us. The onus is on REOC to be out there and to be available. I understand that. I understand that there has been, many years of this tension building, let's say. And I understand that it's, we need to be the party to break the ice and to be out there and available for you all. So you'll see us on the island, you'll see us out and about. Please, stop me, tell me all your thoughts about everything. I'm genuinely curious to hear people's opinions and complaints and suggestions. I really am. I thought we had a great meeting yesterday at the operations committee meeting. And then afterwards, some folks stuck around and we talked very, I think, openly and honestly about some of the issues that people want to talk about. And I imagine we'll get to some of that here today. So I will stop and turn it back over to Paul.
Thank you, Gerald, and thank you, Drew. And I just want to add a couple more words. I was at that meeting yesterday, and it was like a tale of two cities. The meeting after the meeting was when we saw the first signs of this openness and willingness to talk honestly and openly and share thoughts. So I was really pleased and then delighted that the two of you, with Brian, will be here today. We have two items to talk about which are directly relevant for REOC. The first is the F train shutdown every weekend in February, and what REOC can do to mitigate. I guess we could start with that one first, and then that's a way to sort of hear your thoughts on many issues which probably come up related to that. So I'd like to ask people on this Zoom meeting, public or board members, what your thoughts are on what REOC could do better for us. We've been through weekends, occasional weekends where there's no F train, and I think on one of them, one of the trams wasn't working. So it can be horrendous in extremis. So this is the chance to tell our new leadership what we'd like to see happen on this island during every weekend in February. Who wants to go first? Judy.
First of all, Mr. Ellis and everyone, thank you so much, Brian, for coming this evening. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I could feel the fresh air blowing through the office last night after the official meeting was over and the real people sat down and had a really good conversation. My concern is, I think it's only 3 weekends in February. I don't think it is the third. I was told it's 3 weekends. Well, we have to check.
Can we unmute Matt? Because Matt tends to know this stuff really well.
You have a list?
Can we unmute Matt Waldman, please?
Yeah, so I believe the first weekend we will have Queens-bound E and F trains only. And then, so that's the weekend, February 3rd and 4th. And then the weekends of February 10, 17, and 24, there's no trains at all stopping on Roosevelt Island.
Okay.
And MTA is only providing a shuttle bus on 10, 17, and 24 to Queens Plaza. And I believe the weekend of the 3rd, they are not providing shuttle buses to Roosevelt Island, and they want Roosevelt Island residents to ride the Queens-bound train, then transfer to a Manhattan-bound train.
I'm very confused. So on the first weekend, the train is only going Roosevelt Island to 21st Street?
No. So there will be regular E and F trains running. So like the full length E and F trains will be running through Roosevelt Island that first weekend. Only Queens bound trains. The regular, no shuttle, regular. So you can go all the way to
Like the good old day, like the good old days?
Like good old days.
The real train, yeah.
Okay, that's confusing enough. Oh, good. So everyone has an appointment in Queens that weekend can take the train to Queens.
So if you're in Manhattan and you're coming back to Roosevelt Island, you can go to any E or F train stop and get on the train, come straight back to Roosevelt Island. But leaving Roosevelt Island, you have to go to Queens first, then transfer to a train to go to Manhattan.
Okay, well, thank you. It's very, very informative. I mean, I've been avoiding the tram because I've just, hear these things, but I really think that the shuttle buses to Queens Plaza seem to work okay. The trouble is that the MTA is getting lazy with signage. They just seem to say, well, you guys know what to do. There was no signage on a lower level in Manhattan at 63rd Street until yesterday, telling people where the shuttle was headed to. And there are very few posters around. The MTA still has old posters up. And I really think the important thing is communicating. And it's going to be very confusing to communicate the first weekend. But I really think and one other thing is the station is filthy downstairs. Everyone who's here representing a politician, would you please get the MTA to the platform? It is absolutely disgusting. And also there are very few benches. So aside from cleaning the place up and making the first weekend very well informed, that's all I have a comment on at this point. But I really would like to see a better maintained station downstairs. It's really gross.
Thank you, Judy. Let's go to Frank Ferentz, please. And what are your thoughts on what REOC can do to help us with?
So Paul, we have Jacob from Assemblymember Seawright's office in case you want to hear his comment.
Jacob, yes, thank you.
Folks, I'm happy to give a comment, but I just Ms. Judy Birdie just made a request of elected officials' offices, and there was just some noise in the background. I just didn't hear it. I was hoping she could just repeat her request of us.
Oh, my request is that you get the more signage, more posters, more information, especially for the first weekend, which is going to be a completely different route. And secondly, the station downstairs is filthy. It needs to be hosed down. I mean, it's gross.
Do you mean the actual platform where the train is, or the kind of mid-level?
Our platform, since they've moved all the equipment to the other side, our platform is disgusting. It's been used for 4 months as a construction site. And also a lot of the benches are missing on that side. So sometimes politicians have better luck getting the MTA to do something than we do.
We can definitely work on that. Mm-hmm.
Before we go to Frank, why don't we go to Audrey to talk about what Liz Kruger's office can do?
Well, just as thank you. And as Paul knows, because we always see him and usually Matt, we've actually asked for that, Judy. We asked for power cleanings and ventilation, and we'll just ask again. Paul, was there something done last night, though?
No, last week They've had signage put up in the interim last couple of nights in Lexington Avenue Station, but cleaning, they had 2 crews out last week.
I know, but just
Not
the
much.
mops.
Yeah.
I know, we agree, Judy, a power cleaning and also ventilation. It's so deep down that goodness knows what kind of particles are floating around in the air down there. So we will ask again, and I will CC Paul and Matt. Is there someone from RIAC we should be, who we should be working with on this issue? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
we
was gonna
haven't
say,
included them.
I just got your email too separately, Audrey. I'll respond to that offline. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
feel free to reach out to myself or Bryant as you need.
Bryant?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe we'll all be together on this. So thank you. But we're trying, Judy. I agree. We're down there too.
Gross. I was there today. It's gross. Okay.
Thank you, Audrey. Can we go to Frank now, please?
Thank you. So first of all, nice to see RIAC, old and new RIAC leadership here. Thank you for attending. Looking forward to having conversations with you. This one relates to both the MTA and RIAC on the F-train condition. So I commute mostly to Queens these days for doctor's appointments and whatever. And I found that, and I made this point at the RIAC board meeting, I think it was in August when they had the MTA person there making a presentation. I'm not sure what month it was, but you should spend your effort continuing, this is RIAC, you should spend your effort continuing providing the island island bus service. That's your highest priority, in my opinion, because without that, things don't work, especially for residents people on the north side of the island. I wouldn't want to lose that, including the express bus, in exchange for a bus to Queens Plaza. However, we really do need a bus to Queens Plaza, and that Q94, shuttle is great, except it doesn't operate at any of the times that I want. And the problem is the Q102, and I have the snapshots from the bus time and stuff. It's an hour wait or a 45-minute wait during daytime, during normal hours. I complained about this back then, that the service is really uneven. Buses get bunching too, and for whatever reason, dispatchers don't spread them out. That translates into, a 40-minute wait for a bus, which is just during normal hours or near to rush hour. So I would rather that the MTA supply I'd rather have the Q94 bus because it's just here to there and you can't really mess that up. Whereas the Q102, I know just that can really suffer from bunching and delays. In any case, we're not getting the right kind of bus service during the daytime out there, and like I said, I don't want RIAC to lose the resource to Roosevelt Islanders. I'd rather have the MTA provide that. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
It does. Thank you.
Matt, please.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I have just a couple of notes. So first is the MTA shuttle bus that will be operating those 3 weekends during the day to Queens Plaza and during the shutdown. I did experience a couple times when I was trying to take the bus outside from the senior center to Queens Plaza. The bus driver just was refusing to stop. So it seems like it's unclear from the MTA because there's no signage on the Manhattan on the Roosevelt Island Q102 stops if that that shuttle bus during the day is stopping at the Q102 stops, and it seems like some of the buses were stopping, some of them were not, and there was no consistency. So it'd be helpful to understand if they're going to be making those stops, and if not, we know it's only stopping at the subway station, and if it is making the stops, to have signage at all of the stops. Second is I know there's been a lot of, the last couple of months, red buses have been, broken down in repair, maintenance issues. I think been short of some drivers. It would be really helpful to understand how many red buses are currently in service. What's the status of the red buses that are, in maintenance? Is it because there's not enough drivers? Like, really, what is the current status of it? Because, we've had the Queens Plaza shuttle suspended, the Manhattan shuttle suspended. It seems like sometimes there's rush hour red bus, sometimes there isn't. We really don't know what's the status of this. We hear, a couple of buses are down, but what's really going on with it.
Yeah, can I jump in on that point, Matt?
Yeah.
Just real quick. Yeah, so I don't have the slides available to share here, but they were presented last night at the operations committee meeting.
Before you go on, Gerald, is it possible for Brian to grab the slides somehow so we could show them?
Brian have them?
I think that'd be really helpful to have the slides while you talk.
Yeah, I agree. Because there's one slide in particular that I'm looking at where Cy went over our current fleet. So we have 4 operational buses right now. We're in the process of purchasing 2 more buses for the fleet. But he has this great breakdown. So in the morning rush hour,
how about this? While we're looking for the slide, let's go to come back to this. Let's go to Rebecca for now. I think it's worth waiting for that slide.
I agree.
Rebecca, please.
Hi, I was just going to suggest that, to Matt's point, I know red buses are quite randomized. I think definitely agree and hear you on the signage. I think the signage that's over by the north side of the island just needs to be better lit / it's quite old and kind of falling apart a little bit. So the signage is there. It's just pretty awful, to be honest. It just needs a revamp. But for the red bus and the schedule, I know that it sometimes shows up on Apple Maps or Google Maps sometimes, but have we ever thought about potentially crowdsourcing our friends and students at Cornell Tech to potentially make a better application in order to track the buses that are in operation as well as where they are? Because I know with those electric buses, you can actually track where they are on a road. So they are a little easier to do. So I just wonder, Cornell Tech does some really great projects, and I think that would be a really helpful tool for the community. So just throwing that out there as a suggestion.
So Rebecca, I want to address that point first, if I may. I'm getting an echo here. We don't have an echo from me. So actually, we have met with Cornell Tech, and we are talking about doing just this. And also Rick O'Connor, who will be talking later when it comes to the tram item, also has been working on this. So I think it's a great suggestion. We're working on it now with Ryok. And for the first time, Ryok is open to helping us. It shouldn't be complicated to do that. So great suggestion. Thank you. Now we have the slide up.
There used to be an app like that in the past, right? So we should be able to. Yeah. So this is the slide that I was referencing earlier. There we go. So Cy put this together, and it's got a breakdown of what our current needs are and then what we currently have operational. So like I said, this was a presentation that Cy made to the operations committee last night about purchasing 2 new buses. So that's where we're at right now. There's some lead time on the delivery for the buses. It's gonna take
about 12 to 15 months.
12 to 15, right. They are yeah, they're quite expensive actually. Each bus is about $550,000. And then there's maintenance and whatnot that goes along with that. And then it takes a while from the time that you order to the time that they're delivered. So the sooner we can get that in process, the better. We are also applying for a grant with the EPA in order to be to hopefully be made whole for some of the costs of that. It looks like it'll be around 70%, hopefully. We'll see. We're in touch with the EPA regularly about that, about our application, our grant application. But if we get those 2 buses, you can see that we'll be able to do meet all of our basic operational needs, and then we'll have some lax capacity to run special services. So I think it's really critical for us to. And I agree also, I just want to say that our bus service is one of the key functions of REOC operation. So it's very important to us.
Can I ask one thing since we're on that point? For the next 3 or 4 months, while this F train shutdown is going on, that's the crucial time for us when if one bus does go out, we're really hampered, along with maybe every weekend in February, the F train not working. Is there any way that Real can lease a bus, or what are the issues that stop you doing that? Even just the next 3 months would be helpful.
Sure, Judy, I know you were dealing with this today, so.
Sure. So we've explored that. And unfortunately, it's a big liability issue. And also from a union operator standpoint that would have to drive the bus. So it would be difficult. There would be a lot of challenges for us to lease or rent a bus due to those major two significant factors. We did also work with Rita to possibly utilize their bus and possibly be an additional insured on their insurance, but they're unable to provide liability insurance. We would have the bus operator to drive it, but just in terms of liability, it wouldn't work. So right now, the plan is to continue with the 4 buses that are operating. We do have another bus where if we change a couple of parts out, that it could be operational if one bus was to break down. But currently, we can run daily operations with 4 buses. We could even run with 3 buses, according to SCI. But I think for now, we're in a good position because these are the newer buses. All the other buses that were decommissioned or not operational, they were much older.
So one question, it says on the slide that 5 buses are required in the morning hours, but then you talk about 4 buses.
Correct. Right now, we are with 4 buses. I'm not sure if that's a typo. I'll have to speak to SCI, but right now we are running with 4 buses for daily operations.
First thing to say, I'd like to say is that it's nice to get answers like this. At least we didn't used to get answers like this. So even if it's not the answer we'd like, it's nice to get the answers. So thank you. Let's go to Matt, please.
Okay, yeah, so just a couple more comments. Another one is connecting from the red bus to the tram. I noticed this happen, several times over the last few weeks with myself and some other neighbors on Roosevelt Island. So all the red buses once they start from the Octagon, they're kind of set up to get to the next tram. So a 9:15 from the Octagon is really set up to get like the 9:30 for tram, from what I understand. Sometimes I understand the tram could get caught up, be like a few minutes late. It may not make it. But from what I observed, I just got off the red bus and the tram wasn't waiting for the people to transfer from the red bus to get onto the tram. So if the red bus is coming up in a couple seconds, see if is this something possible. The tram operator can wait for the people getting off of the red bus to the tram. And then another comment was, so on weekdays we do have a red bus connecting to every tram. So we have the morning rush hour and afternoon rush hour. We have both trams are running, and I believe that it's set up that there is supposed to be a red bus connecting, picking up passengers at the tram for every tram that arrives. Now on the weekend, I believe it's 15-minute. It's every 15 minutes, the red bus. So that means every other tram, there's no red bus connection. So if you're leaving from the Octagon and you want to get to the tram, you may have to wait for the next tram and it may not line up to it. So it looks like, if we do have 4 buses right now in operation, like why do we have the red bus service on the weekdays but not on the weekend?
To add to that, Matt, so Ben here, and this is really a question that we kind of raised a few months ago, and hopefully now with the new leadership we'll be able to come up with some answers. Originally, the Octagon Express team was willing to be flexible about maybe freezing the Octagon Express for a certain period of time, especially now that we don't have enough buses, so we could coordinate scheduling. Unfortunately, the team didn't have a chance to come to agreement with them, but hopefully now they'll start a conversation again, and hopefully in the next week or two, at least we'll get an answer if it's possible. But second to that, part of the conversation we had 3 months ago is, should we sync the red bus to the tram, or should we sync the red bus to the shuttle? And that's a really good question, because once you decide which I know right now, I think we tried to sync it, and Gerald, please correct me if I'm wrong, we tried to sync it to the tram, but with the tram schedule changing, because we wanted to make sure that we meet capacity, so the tram kind of like as soon as it fills up, it goes, especially during rush hour, it's very hard to sync them up at this stage, contrary to the subway, which has a very set schedule, which makes a lot more sense to try to sync to that schedule. But I want to throw it back to you, Gerald and Daniel, Brian, sorry, if you guys want to react to that.
Yeah, so a couple comments, I guess. I think you're right, Ben, that they were synced up to, or the thought was to sync them up to the shuttle. And I think too, I was actually walking by the tram today and I saw the bus, exactly like you said, wait for folks to get off the tram. And I've experienced it the other way, where you get off the bus and you're running for the tram and the tram takes off anyway. Part of it is our focus with the tram is to keep it running constantly. And so maybe we need to readdress that with POMA and see if in those kind of circumstances, especially maybe in the middle of the day where there's less immediacy, where there aren't big lines for the tram, where they could wait a minute for people to get off the bus if they see a bus coming. But honestly, the biggest complaint we get about the tram is tram lines, right? So the general directive, I would say, with POMA is to keep it running. And maybe that is kind of the source of some of this. So I think that's something worth visiting for sure.
And that's why I feel like, by the way, and this is just like a brainstorming here in front of all of you guys, is that we don't have enough buses / drivers, so sometimes it's just impossible to sync up to the tram. But the subway shuttle, at least for the next 3 months, only runs every 3 times an hour. And if we make sure that like Manhattan bound 3 times an hour and Queens bound 3 times an hour, and if we sync to that, I think that would be a great service for a lot of people, especially knowing that the tram is already overcrowded, especially during rush hour.
Before we go to the next people who've got their hands up, I think, Matt, there was something you'd asked which we haven't addressed yet. I think it was about the frequency on the weekend versus weekdays.
So we have a 15-minute service on the weekends, and right now we do have 4 buses, so it appears there is enough. We have enough buses to run 4 buses on the weekends as opposed to the 2 buses. So just wondering why we have different service on the weekend.
I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I will ask Cy and get back to you. I don't know if Bryant or Drew have anything on that. Oh, Bryant, if you could unmute Bryant too.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Why don't we take down the screen sharing? That's good. Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, sorry about that. I had to keep muting because of a loud 14-month-old, and then I have to. How do I stop sharing?
It stopped.
It stopped.
It stopped?
You're good.
Okay. So sorry about that. I think part of it, Matt, I don't know this either. We can double check with Cy, but I think part of it is since the F train service has changed, what we started doing was we started running the tram at a rush hour schedule on weekends to sort of benefit the community. And we don't necessarily run the buses on a rush hour schedule on weekends. It's like, like any other sort of, I think, transit system, you have the rush hour schedule for weekday mornings, and then on the weekends, it's a different sort of ball game. So I think we upped the amount of tram rides that we were doing, and didn't necessarily up the amount of bus trips. I mean, that's my guess, and we'll double check with Cy on that to see. what the story is. I think, there is obviously the concern about all the additional wear and tear. And I think that there's, we have to talk about having additional personnel if we're running more buses on the weekends. So I think it's a larger conversation. But I think the general answer is why they don't sync up as well on the weekends as they might on the weekdays is because we are asking the tram to run more regularly on the weekends than we had been.
Matt, was that all of your questions addressed?
Yeah, so from my understanding, I believe the tram has run, the two cabins were running. I think it was like 7 a.m. maybe to 8 p.m. And I think REOC had extended the rush hour service, I think until 10 p.m. So I believe it was already running the rush hour schedule on the weekends. I think it was just the hours were extended a couple, later in the evening. From maybe that's what I believe.
It was definitely extended.
Yeah.
Let me double check on
But
what it was.
I believe both cabins were running already on the weekends. So I'm just not sure of the exact time.
Thank you, Matt. Can we go to Judy, please?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say it's time to order two more new buses, not until we wait until these two. Let's put our bid in for two more additional buses, because by the time we get them, our current buses that we're using will be 10 years old. I mean, this has to be a continuing purchase cycle like everyone else. You don't wait until your buses are all in critical condition on life support. I mean, SI is giving them a CPR every day. This cannot go on. We have to order two buses for 2 years from now and two buses for 4 years from now. It's a business sense. It's so infuriating to have to wait until everything is dying to order something. We knew about this bus situation for years, and I'm sorry the previous administration didn't take it very seriously, but we as residents should not have to wait and pray that a bus is going to come and the buses aren't going to break down. Also, being at the visitor center most weekends, it's always been one bus every 15 minutes or whenever it gets there. There's never been any kind of rush hour bus service on weekends. And it's sort of catch as catch can. You get off the tram, the bus is there, you're lucky. If not, you have to wait a few minutes. But there's never been a service on the weekends where a red bus met every single tram because the trams run on rush hour. But I just want you to put a pre-purchase order in for the next two buses, so we don't have to go through this every few years.
I think that's very, very sensible, Judy, and we hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice to get answers like that. Thank you. Let's go to Rebecca, please.
I echo that because I feel like right now it is a choose your own adventure in terms of getting anywhere for when the buses arrive at the stops. I would encourage the Cornell Tech folk to take that away to also add to as the schedule changes to at least have some notification. Right now I'm having trouble kind of staying on top of what schedule we're on, which I think is part of this call or this conversation. And then additionally to consider maybe fixing the decommissioned bus, because I know that a part for a bus is not as expensive as a whole bus. So maybe as a short-term solve, we could do that, a lower cost, and I'm sure it would be a little more cost efficient. And then additionally, I don't know if this is something REOC could provide or this committee could help with, but in Matt's questioning, we do have a private shuttle at the Octagon that our residents pay into. So I don't know if it's something that REOC could take away the Octagon Express, but also pressure our building to make that shuttle a little more efficient / regular, because it is a service we're paying for. So that might be a way for you guys to get a bus back, but also the residents of Octagon to not also complain about that service, because it is something that's supposed to exist. It's just our building is not consistent about providing that service. So
Can I just ask, can you on that service, can you explain it a little bit again?
Yeah, so we pay as residents, we pay like an amenities fee, and it totals quite a bit. I did the math once; it's like $585, $500,000 almost per unit. If everybody is a renewal, it's $400 to $700 depending on if you're a first-time resident or a renewal, and that amount is supposed to go to things like our shuttle, which our shuttle service is a shuttle that's provided by a third-party company that our building pays for, and it's just for residents. It's the little black limo-ish van that drives around the island. It's not consistent, so most residents of the Octagon then go to the Octagon Express. But if we could get some help pressuring them to make that a little more consistent, you could potentially get that Octagon shuttle back, and we could actually be using the resource that our building is paying for anyway. So we're not losing anything, but we might need some help with pressuring our building to actually make that scheduled, maybe on the same schedule that Octagon Express was.
And just for that bus, the black limo bus, what's it supposed to be? What's the headways, or how is it supposed to be functioning?
It's supposed to be every 15 to follow the timing of the shuttle train. I can tell you, and I'm sure Matt could probably echo this statement, I don't know what the schedule is anymore. It's constantly changing. It's never out front. I've tried asking about it, so I think it's one of those things we might need some just help, pressuring the building if that's an option to basically take away that bus and get you guys the bus back.
Yep, I hear you loud and clear. We need to reach out and talk with them about the express bus and the app. The old bus app that was working for the island was actually instituted in conjunction with Octagon when the building was built, and we started this express service with them so that people at Octagon could see when it was coming or not. So this is very helpful information for us when we speak with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Can we go to Frank, please?
Okay, so I probably have the most knowledge on this, up to including Cy, on this from a scheduling perspective, because we've analyzed this very, very thoroughly. So the app that we had years ago, which was the Next Bus application, when it first came out, it was terrible at prediction. I'm a computer scientist, okay, and I could prove why it was unable to predict well. Machine learning does not help that. So just bringing the new technology, that doesn't help that. There are reasons why there are prediction problems on that and the quality of the prediction. Second thing, during weekdays, we have to move a lot of people. So on the order of 5,000 or 6,000 people to the subway, and on the order of about 3,000 or so people to the tram. That is what we need to do. So now place that in terms of scheduling. You can run the red bus on a 20-minute schedule. The problem is you don't have enough volume then on that pace then to move people on the north end and the middle of the island to the transportation hub. So you need to run it on a 15-minute schedule. Another problem is that the 15-minute schedule is tight. And once you start making it a free-floating schedule, then you then incur bus bunching, which is a normal problem in queuing theory. So these things play out, and that's the reason why you have a 15-minute schedule. On the weekends, what you could do is you look at the pain. One way to look at this is the cost of the pain. I don't know how, again, on weekday numbers, you would say most of the pain would, in terms of missing a train, would be on the subway connection, because more people use the subway in contrast to the tram. And so if you were to schedule on the weekend on a 20-minute schedule, you could actually then make the train and sync it to the train, which would be useful for getting onto the train. I know a lot of people, get worried about missing the train. Meanwhile, on the tram, it's possible to run it on a 10-minute or a 7-minute schedule. So it's a multiple of the cycle and still sort of get to syncing with the red bus, except that only 1 out of 3 trams are going to be there with a bus waiting for them. In the wintertime, it's a longer wait and it's colder, and we've dealt with that in the past. So, but during the weekdays, you really do need the buses running regularly, and you don't have the ability to shift the schedule because there's not too much. It takes an hour basically to get around the island I'm sorry, half hour to get around the island. Is that right? Yeah, half hour to get around the island. And you don't have the ability to shift that uh, when uh, when the schedules are so tight. Those bus drivers just barely make the schedule. That's even true in the evening. So the evening schedule, if you want to do every 20 minutes, and make that easier for the subway, that's fine. It's just that the subway stops running at a certain point. I think the best benefit on that would be the weekday. And then getting back to, if we did run just regular 4 buses but kept the schedule, the problem then is then now back to Octagon is that there's a long wait. We have the capacity. It's just the problem for Octagon is that they always had an extra delay. That's the reason why we got the Octagon Express. And the Octagon Express, my recollection is that was $110,000 that Octagon paid to REOC annually to provide that service. So REOC asking to take away the Octagon Express and then asking Octagon to use its own bus. I don't know, maybe we can deal with that over a couple months, but that's not a long-term strategy. Then going back to, I think, was it Judy who said, get the buses, that we should be doing that, right now as quickly as you can. And hopefully you can scavenge and get another bus operational. But I can give you more, but I'm just saying that's the reason why all these things are locked in and where you have variability. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Does anybody else have any other questions, comments, or thoughts about how to deal with February every weekend shutdown before we move on? Great. So moving on to the third agenda point is about the tram. I think Rick, who's now in Boston today, I was asked to hand this over to you to moderate this part. Is that correct? You and Ben together, or am I missing the point here? Looks like I'm throwing you in the deep end without you realizing it. Sorry. Ben suggested that you might be doing something like this. I could have it wrong.
I mean, I can comment upon what other people are talking about. I'm just not sure what you want me to do in terms of moderating.
Ben, this is your suggestion.
Ricky, Ricky, you had a couple of questions that you asked me, but really you could open it up to the panel unless you want to just completely open it up. You had a few questions that you raised about the tram in general, so I thought that could be a good starting point.
Right. I mean, the questions are regarding the overcrowding on the tram caused by, what many people believe is overcrowding caused by tourists using the tram as a sightseeing attraction. And is there any way which frustrates Roosevelt Island residents greatly who are just trying to get home from work or home from school or go to work? Well, it's basically coming home during the weekday and on weekends when sometimes the line can reach, down 2nd Avenue and sometimes to 3rd Avenue. And the question is, what can be done is there anything that can be done to alleviate that?
So before we go to Ben, I would like to actually give it to Gerald to have a chat about this first, because we had very different kind of answer than the one we're about to receive now when we first asked this. So Gerald, let me pass it over to you.
Well, what was the previous answer?
Just no.
A plain old
no.
No. Well, that's straightforward. No, I mean, well, what we talked about last night, right? I mean, we spoke about this last night, and I think that, well, a couple of thoughts, right? I think we're trying to get to yes. I'll start there. We hear you. I get regular updates, for instance, from as does Drew from PSD regarding the state of the tram and if there's a line or not and what it looks like if there's.
Just so people are clear what we're talking about, the answer is we're trying to get to yes for preferential boarding.
Well, we're trying to come up with some solution, right? So one of the suggestions last night that we discussed, and I don't think this is necessarily popular, but at least we're having these discussions, right, openly and honestly with the community. One of the suggestions that was brought up was, potentially putting some sort of shading or tinting or covering on the tram windows to kind of disincentivize tourists from riding the tram. I don't think that's necessarily a popular idea, but we've heard that idea. We've talked about it openly. So I think that's a good start.
Can I add to that a second before you continue? Awesome, thanks. So one is like I've heard about this a couple of days ago by Dr. Melamed, and we both were kind of like horrified by the idea because I love the tram and I love looking out of the view, and I'm willing to tolerate tourism so I could look out of this incredible views that we have on the tram. But then Dr. Melamed told me something that she said, why don't we test this out on one tram out of two? And that way you have one tram that has great views, one tram that doesn't. Tourists will flock to the one that has great views. And obviously residents that just want to get home would probably just go on the one. So we're that way creating two separate lines without legally creating two separate lines because it's a choice of the consumer, which I really don't hate the idea as an experiment as long as we're not committing to that long term. If we could do that over these current weekends that are going to be problematic, I think that would be incredibly cool to test out this theory. Sorry for jumping in, Gerald.
No. Yeah, and so this I'll say too, right? I'll back up and I'll say that I only heard this suggestion very recently, and then Ben brought this suggestion to me from Dr. Melamed about the two separate trams, which I actually think is even more sort of ingenious. But yeah, Judy, your hand's up.
How did you know my hand would be up so fast? We all came here as tourists. Most of us moved here because we rode the tram. This is pure stupidity. We will be finished hopefully by May. Also, God bless this miserable weather. We don't get very many visitors. We're getting on the tram, as far as I know, this week. There were no lines. We can just act like adults and live with it. Get better public safety officers downstairs. You, as the chief of the department now, you have to get them to stop acting with their pompous, arrogant methods to the residents. If someone says, I'm old, just go to the elevator. No questions asked. The public safety officers, from what I understand, and Margie will vouch for me, have been obnoxious. And it's up to you as the boss to tell Kevin and Anthony, enough. You know, the people recognize people, they're old. Just get on the damn tram and stop interrogating people and stop telling old people, seniors, people with little time, just go on the tram. You know, why do we have to make this into such a big deal? Common courtesy. I also suggested that to public safety, and of course I was laughed at, have line monitors, have people who are not public safety officers down at the tram at busy times and just take the older people and people who need assistance, send them to the elevator. We don't need the Gestapo tactics that our public safety officers have been using down there. And it's up to the boss to say enough.
Can I just jump in on that point? Because, and you know, this obviously we inherited this system and it dates back a long time. I had a call recently with POMA and the union because just so everyone understands, right? REOC, well, POMA works for REOC operating the tram, right? But the tram, the employees that you see on a day-to-day basis, they're employees of POMA and they're unionized. So for instance, this issue about station attendants, really there's been an issue between the union and REOC and POMA regarding station attendants. If you know, there are a couple booths, there's a booth on each station, and in the union contract with POMA, they discuss station attendants, right? And this is an issue with in many contexts with unions, right? Unions are very protective over the jobs that their workers are supposed to be doing, which I understand and respect. But we received a complaint from the union regarding the way that PSD officers were interacting. Essentially, they were mad at us because they were saying that our PSD officers were doing the jobs of station attendants. And you know, we had a good talk with them. I think the jobs are just fundamentally different, right? The station attendants are there with their specified duties. Public safety is there exactly for that reason, right? To provide public safety. So yes, there may be overlap. Everybody's going to be helping out, you know, elderly people or people with a stroller to get through the turnstiles, but that doesn't mean that the public safety officers are trying to take away work from the union, right? So
I add to that just to contextualize it back to the community.
Yeah.
As much as the contract is interesting. One thing I would really wanted to respond to Judy is like, yes, there's some problems with interactions with PSD, but one of the things that I get the most commonly from random people in the street is how grateful they are to PSD, including in the tram. A lot of stories of people that told me that a PSD officer literally walked them into the station and helped them sit down when the station was cramped. I understand it's not always happening, and we heard you loud and clear yesterday, Judy and Margie, and I think we'll work with PSD to reinforce our already agreed on procedures where people with disabilities and seniors should have priority access, which is legal, and there's no questions about that. But moving back to what you're saying about that it's a double quote stupid to put privacy screens, that was my first reaction as well. But I don't think that's true if we're doing it just temporarily and literally just in the scenarios where we have crazy overcrowding. It has nothing to do with tourists now. I don't think over the winter months we're having a flux of tourism. That's usually in the summertime. But it's more about, for example, these upcoming weekends where we know everyone's going to be going to the tram. It could be a good place to test it out. If it's a bad test, then we do it for 2 weekends and we forget about it. I don't think it's even expensive, this test. So even though initially I thought it's a terrible idea, I'm a fan of trying it as long as it's only on one tram.
Have you asked the tram management? Is it safe? Is it's probably
That's a question. Obviously, we wouldn't do it if they said no.
Anyone spoke to Armando?
There are a couple of, PSD raised some safety issues with it potentially. So we're still working through it, but we also on the same time want to judge, public reaction.
Folks, I want to move on to other people to give them a chance. We have a large number of people who want to speak. Let me go next to Margie, please.
Judy said that I could attest to the fact that the public safety officers are being obnoxious. I'm not attesting to that at all. I think I'm attesting to the fact that there's confusion. And not all the public safety officers seem to think that seniors are allowed to go right to the elevators. They've been telling them they have to wait online. And when they get to the bottom of the stairs, then they can walk over to the elevators. I think a simple sign posting the rules would help any confused public safety officer to know. And then all you'd have to do, if there's any question, take out your ID and show your age and you're a senior. You don't have to be limping or have any, a walker or anything. And I'm not going to belabor the point on the common carrier law because I know we went over this the other night, but I think we are in violation of that law and have been for a very long time now. And I know there's a separate deal we made with the MTA, but the fact is the common carrier law, yes, first of all, it does give a provision for like a temporary kind of things for special circumstances. So I think we could go right in very legally and do that. But also it says nobody should have priority treatment and everybody should be charged the same. And the fact is Roosevelt Islanders pay more. So we're violating that law right now. They don't pay it on each individual swipe of their card, but they pay it at the end of the year when we get a $2 million shortage in running the tram. So that's
Can I ask before we go to the next people, can we have signage up very soon, large signage at both ends of the tram, making this very clear? Please.
Regarding
regarding who people can get priority access,
seniors and people with disabilities.
Yeah, I know that we had discussed this earlier today too. We are definitely going to look into this and see what we can do as soon as possible.
Thank you. I'm not going to get into a huge discussion right now about the preferential access, right? Because I want other people to have a chance to talk first. If we have time, we'll come back to it. Steve, please.
I would love to touch it if you don't mind, Paul, for just a second.
Let's go to other people first. I want people, there've been people with their hands up for a while, and I want them to
Got
speak first, and we'll come back to it. Steve, please.
Yeah, so I travel on Amtrak, and I'm going to be traveling on Amtrak tomorrow. Amtrak has priority boarding, and that priority boarding includes seniors, families with small children, active military, disabled in wheelchairs or walkers, and business class, which doesn't apply here. But I'm sure we could specify and perhaps have a separate line, maybe leading to the elevators versus the stairs with signage that indicates there's priority boarding for seniors, families with small children. I don't think active military applies here, but disabled in wheelchairs or walkers join this line.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Nice one. Thank you, Steve. Let's go to Ashley, please.
Good evening. So, my question, and it does kind of go back to the preferential treatment, but I was also going to just bring up an overall point pertaining to both the shading and to again going back to priority access for those who are elderly, disabled, or have special needs. So, just in terms of the shading, this is just me weighing in. I was born and raised here, so I'm speaking from 38 years of 38 years total, and including prior to that, my great aunt, she actually worked at Goldwater. And, she used to have to stop on the bridge with the tram and actually just take that elevator straight down. So very well versed in the entire history. The only thing that I have with the shading and where I'm slightly doubtful that it may be effective is the fact, not only just for the views is the reason why people come, but when you look back at the historical architecture of it and it being the only structure like that in all of North America and what it's based off of, and the fact that, yes, I mean, it worked out great for, the island's budget. It's been featured in movies. So sometimes I'm just skeptical about how much that shading is really going to play into that attracting the tourists. So that was just where I wanted to weigh in on that. Secondly, with the priority access for those with special needs, I will say that I am very much in favor of signage, mainly because of my son. My son he is diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and we are in the midst of transportation training with him. There are days, and I just feel so bad. He's waiting for the tram and waiting and waiting and waiting. This is after school. He gets out at 2:30. He goes to school right on 68th and 2nd. So he's at the tram by 2:45, and he's like, yeah, I don't think I'm getting home for an hour or so, or getting on for an hour. I'll let you know. So I'm just bringing up that point, just for not only the elderly and the seniors, but also for those who are younger with special needs as well. But what I can say, and this is something that I know everyone doesn't have access to, but it's just to testify to some of the officers within public safety. There'll be times where they'll see me with him, and I'm not sure what about us might look pinched or tired or anything, and they'll say, maybe he's just looking antsy. Sometimes it's hard for emotional regulation in those kind of settings, and they'll ask, like, hey, are you okay? And one of them has even asked me, is he just are you guys just trying to get home? Do you guys live here? And they've helped us get upstairs. So I can say that I don't know what kind of force-wide training might have to be done. I don't know what collaboration between employees and PSD would have to be done, but I do know that you do have some, as has already been stated, who are willing to help. But that's just where I wanted the 2 cents in. And yes, when everyone else is done, I would love to also go more into the preferential treatment aspect. So,
Thank
you.
Thanks, Ashley.
I like to hear stories like that too. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Before we leave that topic, is there something, Drew or Gerald, that people who have family members themselves who don't fit into the neat category of elderly, in a wheelchair, strollers, is there some way they can get some sort of an identification or a document from REOC that says, please give this person access? Because it can be very hard for that person in the moment to try and articulate and argue for it themselves. So for the exceptional cases that you can't see.
You mean if they do not fit into those categories, or if they do?
If they do not fit in into one of those categories that we listed out before, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm over 60 years old, or whatever. If somebody doesn't visit, obviously by looking at them, fall into one of those categories, could they be armed with some piece of paper which they apply for, which says this person needs that special treatment as well? And it's a very easy system, I think, because those people live here who have somebody with those needs. Once we tell them how to do it, they'll go ahead and do it.
That's a very interesting thing. I've never heard that before, but I mean, we are a governmental agency, so I do think that we would have the authority to issue. I mean, I'll look into it. I mean, I do think that we could, as a governmental agency, but issue documents. So.
But I think I don't know your son at all, but if you're in that position where you can't argue for yourself, if you're dysregulated, that's you need a piece of paper at that point just to show someone, look, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the discussion too.
Thanks, Gerald. Let's go to Sharon, please. Oh, so Drew, did you want to say something on that point? Or did you want to...
muted. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, sure. Yes, that's a good point, Paul. And Gerald and I will definitely do our due diligence. And I think they can have some kind of priority card which can be provided by REOC.
Good. It's a wonderful idea. Thank you. Wonderful answer. Thank you. Sharon, please.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you so much to the REACT staff for being here this evening. I just wanted to follow up on Ben's comments regarding PSD. I have found them to be extremely helpful, not only on the street, but also at the tram as well. And now that I know what you look like, Ben, I'm going to join the ranks of people stopping you on the street and telling you what my pleasant experiences have been with PSD. And also, thank you so much, Ashley, for your comments as well, because I think we need to look at this broadly, and certainly you provided that perspective. Lastly, I would say, vehemently opposed to the privacy screens. It feels punitive towards tourists. And, I want to say that I'm extremely sympathetic to the tourists who want to ride the tram. And so as a Roosevelt Island resident, when I see how crowded the tram is, and I really do try to be patient. I think Judy alluded to this a little bit earlier. You just really have to just understand that they want to have a few minutes of what we have and feel and experience what we have on a daily basis. But I also travel a great deal, as a matter of fact, internationally. And the idea that I could come upon a tourist site and something like that could be implemented, I would really walk away with not very good feelings about the situation at all. And quite frankly, I really do want people to have positive feelings about Roosevelt Island and really have good experiences. I've come, I've said this, and I really do understand, and maybe since we have new leadership, I'm wondering if it's possible, for example, if the tram is crowded, and if an announcement could be made, for example, the tram is very crowded. If you can wait for the next tram for residents to board, or if not something that specific, say if the tram is crowded, if you can wait for the next tram, please step back, something along those lines. I know that if I was to come upon and hear something like that someplace else, and I knew that my schedule, and obviously a tourist schedule is a bit more flexible, we might have some agreement there, as opposed to somebody who might be running errands or having to go to work, or a mother having to escort her child returning home. I know that I would be one of the ones to step back and allow some others to board ahead of me. But I've been told that that's not possible, but perhaps something, like that can happen. I have begun to hear the announcements on the tram regarding seniors and disabled individuals having priority for the seats. I think that that's really good because sometimes people do need to have that reminder. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Sharon. I'd like to go out of order now for a moment. I want to give a chance to those who haven't spoken yet to speak. I'm going to start, though, with Howard Oliver, who's a resident board director of REOC. Then I'll come to Joyce and go down in order, but I'll give a chance to those who haven't spoken first. So Howard first, please.
He's muted.
Howard, can you hear? Your hands up?
Howard, you should receive a prompt asking you to confirm unmute. Howard, if you don't see the prompt, feel free to send me a
I'm telling
message.
him right now. Are we good, Ellen? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I don't see anything from Howard. No.
Let's go and talk to Joyce, please.
Oh, there
Oh,
he
there he
is.
is.
He's with
He's with
Ellen.
Ellen.
Yes. Howard, did you want to speak? You're
Let's
muted. Can we
unmute Ellen. Can you unmute Ellen?
Hang on a sec, Howard. Hang on a second. Did you get the prompt yet, Ellen, to unmute?
Wait.
There it is.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear all the ideas for giving possible priority access to the tram. But I also have been talking about the shading, not as a permanent idea, but as something which may be expedient to do when there's otherwise a need for controlling the crowds getting into the tram station, because people will voluntarily find it less attractive to be there. Unfortunately, those times do come. And we certainly rely on tourism for the businesses of the island. We rely on it for the economics of the tram itself. And we don't want to discourage it completely. But I think it would be useful if we had in our arsenal a temporary way of making the tram less of an attractive nuisance and to focus it on its real purpose, which is to get people safely from one side to the other. So if it's safe, if it's feasible, I think it would be a low-cost solution to try, and certainly would be reversible. So I'd like to be a proponent for it. That said, also, I'm very glad to hear the exchange of ideas. I'm very heartened to see staff stepping up in this meeting and this last night's meeting and future meetings. And I think it indicates a way that REOC could be moving forward with the community's support.
Thank you, Howard. I have one comment.
One more idea. It's been told that perhaps we would just mask one tram. That would be a fine idea if it were feasible. What I mean by that is that if you remember what the configuration of the tram platforms, and you remember the space in front of the turnstiles is not very extensive. So crowd control, to be safe, has to be occurring at street level. So while that's possible, I just want to put out there that people will not be able to differentiate themselves once they get to the platform. You might have people holding back, waiting for the good tram, for example. And where would they be holding back? Would they be holding back at the platform itself, which would create a kind of chancy situation? Would they be holding back, blocking the turnstiles coming in? Would they be holding back on the stairs, which is impossible? So that's something that would need to be addressed before we segregate tram usage that way. And thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, Howard. I just have one thought about this.
hold on 1 minute. We have some technical problems here. So we're on several computers. Some are working partially. Can you hear them?
Yes.
Okay.
Can
All
we
right.
mute Howard again, please? Thank you. Just one for the, I'm taking no view here on the shading being good or bad. Just a logistical question. If I'm a tourist, with my accent, I could be a tourist. If I'm a tourist, and I'm at the bottom of the tram because my guidebook says I should go into the tram, how do I know that there are blinds up there? I'm going to go up there, I'm going to swipe through and then go, oh shit, I can't do anything here. How does it work? So I'll leave that.
Obviously, it would need to be a lot more coordinated. It wouldn't be like Howard said, where you just shove everyone in and then they decide if they go left
No,
or
I'm not
right.
saying that, but I'm just saying mechanically, if I'm a tourist, how do I, the whole purpose is to dissuade people called tourists temporarily from coming. If I'm a tourist, how am I going to know this?
In advance, right? I'm not saying that I'm a fan of that idea. I just am open to it. I wanted to follow up on two things. One
Hang on
is
a
like I
second,
really
Ben. I'm
appreciate
sorry.
what
I'm
Ashley
sorry,
said.
Ben. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you. I took a brief detour there. I want to come back to people who got their hands up. They've been waiting
Okay,
for
I have to step off. So thanks, guys. We'll catch up another time then.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.
Paul, I do want to respond to that. I think another component we have to look at is the revenue that we'd be losing. I understand during the winter season, we probably would have, less tourists versus, the summer season. But when we test it out, I certainly want to see, where we fall out in terms of,
yes,
revenue.
I'm making a more simple point, I think, which is if the purpose is temporarily, albeit to discourage tourists from coming to the tram, how are they going to know? Because it's when they get there and see it, it's too late. So I'll leave that with you there. Joyce, you've been waiting an awful long time.
Well, thanks, everybody, and for great suggestions. I just wanted to comment about a couple of things. I rode the tram twice today, and on neither of those occasions did the driver make any kind of announcement about having the seats available for people that were disabled or elderly. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that the signs that indicate that these seats should be given to people that are disabled or elderly are too low. By the time you get to that area, they're covered by people, so people can't read them. The other thing is that we have a lot of tourists. Most people that are Roosevelt Islanders understand that they should be giving those seats to people that are disabled or people that are elderly. But it's really the tourists, and particularly tourists with children. They allow their kids just to run and get into the seats. It would be helpful if we had those signs higher on the window, number one, and number two, in a couple of different languages. Because a lot of the people who would actually, the community would benefit by their knowing that they should be giving up those seats, don't speak English. So I think that that's something that would be very helpful. And while we're talking about signage, when you go to Disneyland, it tells you what size or what age is small, a small child. So I think that in the process of articulating that this line or this priority is given to people with disabilities or people that are elderly or people with small children, that you also articulate what actually constitutes a small child. And the last thing that I wanted to mention was that I think that this idea of giving people, and particularly like children with autism that have an invisible disability, they can get to that line and not be recognized as being a person with a disability. So having something that tells them, that tells the authorities at the tram that this is a special needs priority person would be very beneficial. So those are my suggestions.
And a great suggestion, Joyce. Thank you. And just on that point about how the people actually get to those seats, I think the biggest single way that's going to happen is if the tram operators consistently help people to get there actively. Some of them do a fantastic job. I see them do it every time I go, and some of them don't. And sometimes it's difficult when it's very difficult when it's very crowded. But I think that's our biggest single weapon to help get the people there. So if you could,
even to make the announcement, I had one more thing that I wrote down. If you're looking for a way to control the flow, we have different access points that you can use. So you can have a going up and a going down, or you can have a line for tourists and a line for residents, and you can put them on different stairwells.
Thank you, Bill.
You can use the assets that we have and divide it so that it's better controlled. Because that was the question, is how do you control the flow? Well, use the assets that you have, divide the stairwells.
Thank you. Anything else, Joyce?
That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to go to people first who haven't spoken yet because we've been waiting an awful long time. And I'll come back to you. I promise Rebecca, Judy, Sharon later. Can we go
And I do want to add one more comment to that, Paul.
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
That I'm sure there will be, much more passengers taking the tram as we move on to this new Omni implementation.
Yep. Okay. Let's move. Thank you. Let's go to Kate, please.
Hi, I'm going to try to be quick, but I want to echo support for something, paper or whatever, for people who have like invisible disabilities or limitations. If any of you were to see me on the street, you would think I'm like young and healthy, but I'm not really looking to get into my medical history if I'm just trying to take an elevator on the way home. About the tram, I said this on the last meeting about 1,000 years ago, but we're in extenuating circumstances right now. Personally, I'm getting like pushed or like knocked by phones on the tram by people trying to get videos and pictures and Instagram and yada, yada, yada. And so my patience is kind of gone when I'm trying to get to work or go to the doctor or get groceries, not at Christie's, just trying to live my life. And personally, I find that the tram is so crowded right now that I don't think privacy screens will make a huge difference for 99% of the people on the tram, because most of them aren't near the windows anyway. It kind of feels like Times Square on New Year's Eve in there sometimes. And personally, I'm visualizing the kind of stuff they put on the buses, the city buses, where you can still see through them, but someone trying to get like the perfect video for their Instagram, it's not going to look as good. People are still going to be able to see out. People are still going to be able to have the experience without necessarily trying to make content out of it, which I think is a lot of the quality of life decline that I personally have been experiencing. Also, it's temporary. The train will be back in hopefully not that long. The screens will be down by the time cherry blossoms are back, all of that. I think it would be a phenomenal solution. I would love to have a priority line, but I'm not holding my breath for that. But I think that's all I got to say on that. Thank you so much.
But just Kate, so what you're saying is the buses have this kind of almost like sprayed on painted look to it, where it makes it a bit too fuzzy for getting great Instagram pictures, but you can still see through it. That's what you're talking about? Yes, sorry, you muted.
Sorry, I muted myself again. But yeah, I'm thinking of buses when they have like an ad wrapped on the windows.
Yes.
And it's perforated. So you can see out, but it's not like a scenic situation. Is the view nice from the tram? Yes. My dad used to take me every Saturday morning as like our Saturday morning ritual when I was little. But I think right now we're in a bit of a crisis, and I would just like to be able to like go to the doctor without fighting through a whole, Disneyland situation.
Thank you for making such good points. Thank you, Kate. Let's go to Rick, please.
Well, given the dual nature of the tram as both a essential transportation and as a sightseeing attraction, I was wondering if it's possible to do some kind of variable pricing for it, just like on the ferry, where the ferry has like a single ticket price, but also a multiple ticket price, which is severely discounted. So since for those that use it as a tourist attraction, it's competing with, going to the top of the Empire State Building or some of these other tourist attractions. Can you come up with a way of charging, I don't know, $10, $15, whatever it might be for that particular use, for a single ticket use, but for a multiple ticket use, keep it at the same price as a subway fare. I mean, that could also raise a lot of revenue for RIAC.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say if there's one, just personally, right? If there's been one idea that I've found the most attractive, it's that, right? That we would have, because let's be honest, right? If as a tourist attraction, it's a great tourist attraction, right? And it's really cheap. It's the cost of the subway ride. But honestly, this goes way back to the inception of the tram, and this particular issue arises from the franchise. So when the tram was built, there was a franchise granted by New York City, and that franchise was granted by the city council. It ties the price of a tram ride to the price of a subway ride, period. So, and then all the contracts that we have with MTA flow from that franchise. So it's actually one of the fundamental, it's part of the fundamental original bargain between the city and the state with respect to the tram, that the price be tied to the price of a subway ride.
Well, can that be changed?
Yeah,
the
it could be
MTA would get
changed.
more money.
So, right.
Everyone would get
So,
more money.
yeah, and in my mind, the analogy that I keep going back to is the ferry, because the ferry price used to be tied to the price of a subway ride, and then I need to look into this for the ferry, but that was decoupled recently, right? But it goes back, like I said, to the original franchise. To and answer your question, yes, it could be changed. It can only be changed by the city council. So that's something that we absolutely, you know, I would support, approaching the city about that if the city was willing to entertain a change in the actual franchise agreement, because I think a lot of this, like I said, flows from that.
So on the ferry is tied to the price of the subway, but if you buy the 10-pack now, you get that price. So it's $27 or $29 now to get a 10-pack. If you want to buy it individually, the ticket, it's $4, but we would do something like $10. So they seem to have satisfied their requirement by making it available if you buy the 10-pack.
Yeah, and just to this other point about, variable pricing versus priority boarding, it's much easier in all these scenarios to get variable pricing than just to get any kind of priority boarding.
Got it. Thank you.
Just one more quick thing.
Yes. Sorry, Rick. Yes.
Just an easy kind of fix for the problems that are going to occur in February when there's no shuttle on the weekends, is if you can go back to the policy you had a couple of months ago, where if people were using a Metro card, if they just showed their Metro card to the PSD officer at the staircase, they would let those people with Metro cards go up first before people that were using Omni cards went up the staircase. Most residents still have Metro cards, or they would buy Metro cards if they knew they could get priority access. I was wondering if during February you might want to try that.
We'll look into it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Tibor, I'm very glad to see you here at this meeting. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all. Thank you, Paul, and pleasure to be speaking with you guys briefly. I know I've had to jump in now for some family obligations. It's my first time attending one of these meetings, but I think these are all really good points that are being raised. I would try to be brief as well, so especially since one point was what Rick mentioned, but I'll add a small additional point. Again, I think it's just important to try to, definitely try to prioritize the needs of us as residents. I'm a resident. I've been a part of the island community even before living here. But I certainly think also trying to continue or weave into that the priority of tourists or the public. I mean, I think we've all had family and friends who have visited, and we've been thrilled that they've gotten to enjoy that. And as someone else I think said, most of us in our first weeks or months, if we can think back to those times, also enjoyed it. Maybe even still now, you see a beautiful sunrise. So I think that's one point. Secondly, if there's a way that we can think about and someone else had brought this point up, maybe what are short-term needs for the quote emergency situation, if you will, of February, and for as long as the F train is down, but ideally not have some of those things perhaps be lasting. That may not be possible, but if it is, I would say let's consider one set of solutions for the next month or months, and otherwise longer term. To the variable pricing, I think that does make sense. Money speaks, and I think if that can be achieved, although it may take some political action, but we have people on this call who are part of that process. I think that would be great. Perhaps here Omni can help us, even though we've all been complaining about it, because Omni is a way where, unlike the Metro card, although I don't know the inner workings of that system, and I believe not by any means working perfectly, but you could theoretically imagine having each resident allowed through some mechanism to register a given credit card with the Omni system, which you can do, and that would allow that resident to purchase, this is basically the mechanism to achieve what Rick brought up, perhaps. And again, there's other smarter people. I would just simply say, let's think about using Omni creatively as part of the way, if we get the permission and the political change to allow a variable pricing scheme. I think that would be wise to do. And again, if we get, the nice thing about the money is we use that revenue that tourists pay, just like the ferry system, to support other aspects of the tram, other functions of REOC. I mean, someone said in the group chat today, was enlightening me about how the cost structure for the tram works, and assuming it's accurate. This is perhaps optimistic, but hey, if we could get a reasonable, not grafting money from the tourists, but a reasonable surcharge from them, maybe that decreases what the buildings have to pay in the lease, and the downstream helps us in our rent. That's maybe a little bit wishful, but the point is the money will help our community if we can not just throw the baby out with the bathwater of ditching the tourists. But again, a lot of priorities here, good thoughts, and glad to be a part of the meeting.
Nice one. Thank you, Tibor. I'm glad you came. Thank you. Let's go to Rebecca now, please.
That is one of the things that I wrote down, was that I would love to see variable pricing, but not so much as variable pricing across like being exclusionary to people that can't afford that variable pricing. I'd like to see MTA pricing versus a resident discount pricing potentially, where I think going to the second point, I know that it's been talked about having some kind of card or indication that you would need to use the elevator. I think asking someone to dehumanitize themselves, to admit that they have a disability that is invisible, that they don't talk about, is not creating or fixing the system. It's actually being less inclusive than it seems, because it's the system that we need to fix, and the universal design should really be at the forefront of that, instead of asking me to disclose medical information about myself that I might not feel comfortable. So I appreciate Kate for saying that, because I think that that's invisibility and disabilities and are often forgot about in that conversation. So I also wanted to point out too, is that signage, I think, is also kind of just stopgapping, but not actually fixing a solution, because as most of the residents are well aware, we are a multicultural community. So I want to make sure that we're not just throwing up signage in English that people are not going to understand, because then we're just going to further confuse people and also further the problems. So especially with the amount of tourists that we do get, I would actually echo Kate's statement. I think I don't necessarily agree with the covering up of the view, because I think the view is what makes it bearable to be carrying all of my things home on the tram and being able to at least look out and see beauty and be like, okay, it's just 6 minutes of crowdedness. But at the same time, I think maybe having some kind of screen if it blurs it from the photo might be a solution for both sides. But I think honestly, just giving residents a discount, I think there is a settle if then clause that everybody does about every situation. And I'd probably be more likely to stand in line if I know it's cheaper. But not trying to harp on this again. But again, I think this is something that can be thrown into at least an application towards Cornell Tech to explore for residents, to be able to know if I'm walking around Macy's, for example, 34th, if I knew how many people were in line for the tram or how busy it was or how long the wait is, I might not go towards the tram. I might go towards a ferry right there. So I might have some alternative transportation. And I think that there's also something to be said about the fact that we talk about the tram a lot and we talk about the subway a lot. And I don't ever hear anybody talk about the ferry. And I love the ferry. I'm always on it. And it's almost always empty during the non-summer months. So there is a discounted rate for the ferry. I don't understand why, as Roosevelt Island, we might go back to advertising. I know it doesn't necessarily go to the same spots, but in front of the tram, there is a bus stop that does go directly to 90th. And sometimes it was faster to take it to 90th and take the ferry for 2 stops. So just if there was potentially I could open up my phone and actually see what's the fastest way to get home as a resident, and using alternative transportation, I think that can be another really great add to a fun project for them to get us a longer term solve. But I also think that I want to just steer us away from potentially thinking of fixing a sign or asking someone to identify themselves when really they shouldn't necessarily have to do that. It's just stopgapping, and it's really just not fixing the overall problem. But in terms of if we were to have some kind of card or variable pricing, I would almost encourage us to also look into potentially an addition of, I have the ID NYC card, which gives me benefits at local museums, art community things, honestly, too many things to list. But if there was something that if I got one of those, it encourages residents to be engaged in the NYC community. You don't have to be registered or an actual like legal citizen, so you can get one. And then if we were to have those people, if they want the benefits or the variable pricing, they could come to the ROTC office and get a stamp to say like a resident stamp or something. So then you're encouraging people to be involved in both NYC, but also our community as a way for maybe to show that as they get on the tram. If we ever were to, again, I don't necessarily agree with the cutting of the line or having that indication, but if we wanted to get variable pricing for residents only, that might be an easy solve, which doesn't cost ROTC any money other than advertising that ID cards exist and maybe buying some stickers. So
I'm going to put you on the spot here, Rebecca. And feel free to smile and say no, thank you. But I would love you to join myself, Rick, Brian, and Jane, who's not here anymore, from Cornell, as we do work on this transit.
yeah, I would honestly love to.
Can you drop your details into the chat, and then one of them will get them to me, please? Thank you. Judy, please.
You're muted.
Okay, hi, Gerald, did you expect this to be such a fun evening? I have to sorry, in back of you. Okay, think of something horrible. Think of Nighthawks. Some crazy guy gets on the tram, the windows are covered up, something happens. Police, fire, helicopters cannot see into the cabin. There's no safe way that you're going to cover those windows, because in case there's an emergency, people have to see into those cabins. You're going to put frosting on the cabins? If there's some pickpocket on this or something's going on, someone's having a fight on the cabin, the police are fighting, no one can see them. This is a completely unacceptable method. And I'm sure the police department would not approve of this, or any safety agency, covering up the windows on the cabins so that no one can see into them or out of them. I mean, it's the scariest thought in the world.
So Judy, I think I want to stop you a second. I think what they're suggesting isn't covering up the windows in the way that you might be getting concerned or are concerned about. It could be a very thin, almost invisible coating that stops it making it being a good tourist picture. It makes it a bit fuzzy.
No, that's an insult. That's a complete insult to visitors. They pay, they get on the tram, and they can't take a picture.
I'm not saying either way whether I agree with it or not, but that's what I think the suggestion is.
Okay, getting back to this, I feel that no matter what you put on that makes it difficult to see into the cabin as a safety precaution, it's just dangerous to the human beings. It's dangerous if someone gets on and there's trouble, and you know how helicopters can come up, you can see what's going on in the cabin, even if you have some kind of fuzzy stuff on it. Well, agencies have to be able to see what is going on in that cabin. And I really think that it is a scary proposal to do anything to block the clear visibility into that, not only out, I don't care about going out, but into the cabins to see what's going on.
Can I just say that I did discuss this briefly with our PSD leadership, and this was a concern that they absolutely raised. The other concern related to that is about the tram operators needing to see out.
Right.
So, that's I have not made up my mind about this. I'm happy to hear this discussion and hear all these points. And honestly, I'm happy to hear it from you as well as to have heard it from Deputy Amoroso. It's good to hear this from multiple people.
Listen, I've been here 46 years. We have never had so many complaints about the tram in the 17 years I've been running the visitor center. And a lot of my neighbors are, we're going to get through the next 3 months, and hopefully by cherry blossom time, the subway will be back, and we'll be back to our utopian happy community, and we won't be bitching at each other. Okay. It's 8:30. This is a long.
We're going to make the last two comments, and we're going to close it after Ellen. We're going to close it. Judy, that was a very nice comment at the end. Thank you. Sharon, we don't need Ellen. Sharon, please.
Hi, thank you. I have really enjoyed this discussion, and really want to thank you, Paul, and everybody who's been participating. I think that these suggestions have been phenomenal. And I'd like to throw another one in the bucket. I would like to ask REAC if they could develop a plan that would have that would some way encourage tourists who do visit the island to stay on the island for an hour. I mean, I would really give it a time limit. For a minimum of an hour. The reason I'm making this recommendation is because I have been very, very surprised while I'm waiting for the tram and the tram doors to open and people are exiting, the number of tourists who remain on the tram, and then the tram operator has to say, "Oh no, you have to go out and pay again to get on the tram." And let me tell you, so many of them turn around, get back on the tram with me. I mean, it makes it even more crowded. They don't even make it to Judy's Visitor Center. A lot of them don't even make it to the Esplanade. And they're just doing a round trip, and that's the long and the short of it. And my hope actually is that there could be some task force created. And I would really like to participate in this task force, by the way, in which we either, there are pamphlets that are handed out in multiple languages, as Rebecca has been stressing, or there's signage, or we additional signage we've talked about already that speaks to either attractions beyond the tram, but most especially our dining facilities on the island. We really want people to be able to walk Main Street and our other streets and patronize our businesses more. They absolutely do, but I'd like to see it more. And that's only because I see so many, as I'm waiting for the tram, they're standing there, they're told that no, you can't have a free ride back to Manhattan. You have to get off the tram and pay again. And if we could, somehow come up with some type of plan to help them to move deeper and further into Roosevelt Island, I think that would be great, and they wouldn't be turning around and getting right back on the tram and making it that much more crowded. Thank you, Paul.
And quick comment on that, if I may. Again, putting you on the spot this time, such a great idea. There must be lots of great ideas on the island of how to keep people here for a bit longer. If you wanted to start a campaign or a project or whatever you want to call it, take the lead on that. I'll certainly support it. And I'm sure other people would join you as well.
Yes, I would like to see REAC support, by the way.
Yes.
And I'm certainly willing to take that on in collaboration with REAC.
Brian,
So
that one's for you.
Yeah, if I could just jump in on that,
Okay.
there are signs. Well, there's the big Roosevelt sign, the RI sign, right? When you get off the tram, and then there's a map there near there that has.
And I love that. I love that because it makes them, I totally love that.
I myself, I literally stopped by that sign today and I was taking pictures of it for my own reference. And some people were getting off the tram at that point and saw me taking pictures of that sign and then came over to look at it themselves. So hopefully they did go and patronize smiling businesses. But I just want to say, I also, just today, I had a conversation with David Kramer about that. He and Treba at our meeting last night Skip Hartman was there, and there's essentially a business alliance that was recently formed on the island, and that's one of the master lease, really an extension of the master lease, and then also signage and an app for the island are their main priorities. So I've been in touch with Skip today about this, and David Kramer as well. This is absolutely something that I think REAC needs to be a part of and is going to be a part of. So thank you.
Okay, well, count me in, and I would love to help with that, and certainly be in contact with Paul and Community Board 8.
Absolutely.
Nice one, Sharon. Thank you. Ellen, please.
But no, I don't know. I put my hand down, so I
No
don't have
worries.
anything to say.
Thank you, Ellen. Rick, please. And final speaker will be Rick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, Gerald just answered, said the same thing I said about the Roosevelt Island Business Alliance, which is being formed to do exactly what was just suggested. So Gerald just said the whole thing. Yeah.
Nice. I have two last comments to make to end this meeting. Firstly, I learned something new today, the word about invisible disabilities. For me, that was one of the biggest striking things that came out today of what we could easily do that would have the biggest impact. Small effort, massive impact. Because I wouldn't want to, if I had my knees playing up, I wouldn't want to have to go justify to somebody, my knees are playing up and can I please. And it must be terrible if you actually, something much more serious than just my knees playing up. So that was one thing I learned. I would encourage all of you to come to February 7th meeting where we're going to be talking about Q102, Q104. That's what the meeting is about. It's with transportation with the MTA. And a quick hands up here, a poll here. I think the purpose of this meeting was to reset the relationship between residents and REOC. I think it's done it big time today. I'd like to see a show of hands. Well, let's do thumbs up or whatever, anything going up at all, whatever you want to. Who thinks there's been progress made today? We've got hearts and we've got lots of people sticking all sorts of things up in the air. Nice.
That's very encouraging. Really, thank you all.
Nice job, everyone. See you all soon and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.